I was born in Bangor at Dow Air Force Base. My father was in the Air Force. We moved to Winterport in 1970. My father bought the farm in 1969. When my father served in the Air Force at Dow Air Force Base, he said when he retired he wanted to come back to Maine. My parents were from Pennsylvania, and there was nothing there for them except for coal mines and steel mills, and no space. So his requirements for a farm was to be large enough so he wouldn't have a neighbor across the street from him, and fields big enough he could fly a plane off of. So we ended up here. He was a navigator in the Air Force, but he was also a private pilot, and my brothers are all pilots. So the town people call it Outback. Where we live is actually what's called West Winterport. I don't know where the edge of West Winterport is, but it has always been called West Winterport. And I have a logo from the farm before my parents bought it, and that's actually on the logo. I think probably Monroe Road, Boston Road, Clark Road, Goshen Road, and Route 139, which is now called the Stream Road, is all what you would consider Outback. So other than school, I didn't really know anybody downtown. It was very rural back then. There were probably 6 houses for like within a 2 mile in each direction. And so we had a farm. We had to work on the farm. We raised all the food that not all of it, but most of the food that we ate. We had milk cows and pigs and horses was my deal. And so it was great. I mean, we had a really good life. And I met some of the kids in town from school, but I didn't get here till 7th grade, so I didn't, and it was only 7th and 8th grade, so I was kind of the outsider kid. We rode the school bus, and when we went to Winterport, we rode the school bus for quite a long time. It was probably half an hour to 45 minutes, and when it got to going to Hamden Academy, it was more like an hour. It was awful, hour and a half sometimes. My parents bought the farm. It was a beautiful place with big buildings and all this stuff, but it was a very old farm. And the woman who owned the farm before us was quite elderly. Her husband had passed away, so things hadn't been maintained. The very first year we moved there, the back of the great big barn blew out and in a windstorm. So my whole young life was tearing down barns, taking care of animals, and rebuilding new barns. And my brothers scampered away from there as fast as they could, but I was always my dad's right-hand man because I hate housework. I still hate housework, and I can pound a nail pretty good. So I followed my dad around, with the hammers and the wrenches, and learned to drive the tractors and take care of the animals. And I still do the same thing. That farm has changed a lot. There was a 3 or 4 story barn attached to the house and a big long L, which all had to come down. There was a big post and beam barn that would be in the road now. The road was very narrow. It was macadam, but there was hardly any traffic. And I mean, we could play in the road. We had just gardens and a few animals. And my dad was fairly older when we bought the farm, or when they bought the farm. And so he kind of had his retirement years there. As I aged, I have a degree in agriculture, and I started doing more with it. I've raised sheep and beef cows and horses and pigs, and I still do it part-time. So we got horses on the farm when I was 12. My dad had promised my sister that if they got a piece of land, she could have a horse. So before there was even a fence or anything up, she comes home with a horse, sort of putting the cart before the horse, or the horse before the barn. But I still have horses, and I chased horses as a young person, learning to train and ride and drive, and I still do those things. There's a saying, the outside of a horse is good for the inside of people, and I've seen a lot of kids really grow from being really afraid and not self-confident, to learning how to be around an animal and then learning how to control an animal. And you can see the change in people and the confidence that it builds. So that's one of the things that I like the best, is teaching children and adults and horses. So there's 200 acres on my farm and there's 4 houses. When we bought it, when my parents bought it, it was 1 house. And they gave my brother a piece and he built there and he raised his kids there. They gave me a piece and I built there and I raised my kids there. And I have another brother who has built there. And he's never had any children. And my kids grew up in the same place. They grew up, we grew our own vegetables and we grew animals for food. And the horses was, they did all kinds of activities with horses, from pony club to long distance trail ridings in the North Maine woods and camping trips and lots of fun things. Camping at Acadia and riding the carriage trails down there. So growing up on the farm, there was not a lot of things to do. You couldn't go to the movies because the movies were far away and most people didn't have extra cars or gasoline to get there. So our farm and the farm next door was a dairy farm, and the farm, which would be my backdoor neighbor, but like a mile away, through the woods, had horses, and all of us kids would get together and we would ride through the woods and all over the roads. And I think I've probably seen about everything you can see in the woods and along the roads in West Winterport, Frankfort, Monroe, Newburgh. I mean, I rode my horses everywhere. And all the neighborhood girls did too. If they didn't have horses, I had them. The dairy farmer next door used to have them, and the dairy farmer outback used to have them as well. It was really fun. One of our neighbors used horses in the woods, and so the way they'd keep them fit for working in the winter is there was an old fellow named Lou Kingsbury who would hook the horses up to these long poles. They were, trees, but about the length of a telephone pole, and he would drive to the stores and buy candy. Well, I'm pretty sure he was going to buy beer, but he'd buy candy too. And he'd throw it out to all us kids on the way back home. And as the season went by, those poles got shorter and shorter because he went probably 10 miles every day with that team of horses to keep them fit. We didn't come into town for much. The Methodist Church started the Nativity scene, and they had a kids' youth group. So we would come in for the kids' youth group, and they sometimes put on dances. We did the live nativity scene. My father used to bring animals. I used to be like some of the actors in the live nativity scene. And then until they stopped, I brought animals to not every year, but almost every year. And my children and my granddaughter have also participated in that. So, but out in our neighborhood, like we had our stores out there, and the farm that my parents bought at one point had been a service station, and so it was its own little community. And the Monroe store was closer, and Weaver's store, which was like in the middle of nowhere, was closer than coming in town. So we did a lot of stuff in West Winterport. The Winterport's live nativity scene went on for 50 plus years. And I wasn't in the first nativity scene, but I was in some of them. And then my children were, and my kids were. And my father provided animals. And then after Dad got too old to do it, I provided animals. Well, they needed sheep and cows and a donkey, which was usually a pony or a horse. And one year I don't know why I didn't have a horse. Maybe I didn't have a horse that was gentle enough or something. And so a friend of mine had a donkey. So we got the donkey, we bring her downtown, and of course the donkey goes, I'm a country girl, I don't like this. Didn't want to walk, didn't want to go. Finally, did its part, and then was standing next to the stable. And when the group of people were singing, the donkey started hee-hawing with the singers. It was so beautiful. For me, the nativity scene was always, didn't matter how grumpy I was or how rushed I was about getting ready for the holidays. It's like, this is what the holiday is about. It isn't about all the junk. It isn't about all the stuff. It isn't about all the hurry. It's about that story. And that nativity scene was so beautiful with the lights and with all of the community coming together, because it was every church in town, even if you didn't go to church. And the costumes were made by the people, the set was made by the people, people from town were the ones who did the speaking and made the lights work. I mean, that was probably, that's like my one Winterport community thing. It was the live nativity scene. And basically our whole family has been involved with it. My brother's kids, my kids, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. But the donkey she was pretty special. She thought she was going to sing right along. It was fun. We had, like I said, the youth group at the Methodist Church, and it was great because I got to meet some of the kids in town. And there was always what was called the Blueberry and Blues Festival in August. So we would come into that, and people would play music and have blueberry pies. There was an ice skating rink, a little frog pond up the road. They would we'd keep it clean and have little fires and whatnot up there. If I did activities once I got to high school, I had to take the late bus to get down to Winterport, but there was no bus that took us out back. So L. Hodges Market used to be gracious enough to let us come in and hang out at the store until our ride got there. And that was always like the hangout spot for me. So yes, the L. Hodges, they were probably the nicest people I've ever met. And a bunch of kids were around my age, a little bit older and a little bit younger. So it's just a general market. They had grocery stores and a little lunch meat and soda pops and fruit, a little bit of fruit, Sonny L. Hodge used to run it, and he has gotten old and passed away now. His wife is still alive, but the store has been gone for years. I think it was 1976. I think that's like the 100-year, I can't remember, you'll have to ask the girls, anniversary. I don't know if it's the centennial of the town. And they had a parade, and one of my horses that I taught to drive, and I were in the parade with my little brother. They used to have parades occasionally for different things. We'd come down and do that, with the horses, which was always fun. When they used to have the music festival, which was really fun, I would bring farm animals in or ponies for pony rides. And one year we brought, I borrowed everybody's dogs. We brought all these different kinds of dogs. So it was fun. We've done a lot of fun things with this town. When I was in college, like I said, I spent a year doing liberal arts work, and then I went to the University of Maine and have a degree in agriculture. And the one thing they taught me was that you go where the money is. If you can make money raising chickens, raise chickens. You can make money raising beef, raise beef. If you can't make money on the farm, work off the farm. So my mother was a telephone employee, and she said that she could get me a job, and I didn't want one. I was like, no way, I am not working for a corporation. But I needed money to pay for school, and so I took a job and had health care benefits and a pretty good pay for a girl's job. And so then I just did the farming and the horses part-time, and I worked as a telephone operator, different jobs within that. So started out as just a dial-o operator, and then I couldn't stand the job, but I needed the money. So I took every opportunity that they gave to do something where I didn't actually have to be a telephone operator, like training people and running they would have it's a union job. So I would do the highest union authorized job that would run the office but not be a manager. And after 13 years, I bid out to the construction side of the house, and I spent 20 years working, started out as installation and repair, and then went and worked in the line crew for a couple of years, setting poles and running cable. And then I retired by being a cable splicer, and I spliced everything from paper cables in the underground to fiber optics and the multiplexers on the end of them. I've done a bunch of other fun jobs like driving horses and working for rich people that have horses and fun jobs, things that I really like. So when we worked as operators, especially when I was a dial O operator, if there were storms, they'd keep us overnight in Bangor. Sometimes we'd work all night because there were certain offices. I think by the time I got out of that, there were 3 offices. And if one would have to close because they couldn't get people to come in and work, we would stay open. And we provided, like, you didn't have 911 back then, so you called the operator if you needed the fire department. We had all the emergency numbers and would connect people through. And so that was pretty important. When I did installation and repair work and in cable splicing, I would go out and work storms. Like in 1998, we had an ice storm, and I worked, I can't remember, 14 or 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for a month, along with the fact that the ice storm hit my house as well as everybody else. And that was really moving because I went to people's houses that, no heat and no electricity, obviously. And they would have their little camp sets out. Can I make you a cup of coffee? Like, yes, please. Because, I was in the same shoes. And it's like we look out for each other out there. If somebody has a problem, you do what you can do to help them. And that's probably the most special thing, because a lot of places people won't even look you in the face. Out in my neighborhood, like I said, there were probably 9 houses in 2 miles in either direction from where I live. And my father bought the property so that we wouldn't have a neighbor across the road, but our farm also borders Frankfort. So today, if I sit on my front porch, I can see 2 houses right down on the stream in Frankfort. It aggravates the daylights out of me, and it's not my land. There's nothing I can do about it. But 1A was a small road. It's now a major road. Down in on the roads out where I live, out in West Winterport, it was very rural. There would be occasional cars. Now I have a hard time to get across the road. The biggest thing for me is the traffic and the number of people that live here. We have apartment buildings. I mean, there's been, in this, what used to be open space in Winterport is now apartment buildings just everywhere. And so people have to live somewhere. I just really appreciated the way I grew up. For me, the town of Winterport is the people that have grown up here that I know are very friendly and open. And when people move to the neighborhood, they need to be courteous to the traditions of what goes on in the neighborhood. An example is the snowmobile club goes through my farm. And every year they come out and they maintain the field, the trails. They used to be in the fields, they're in the woods now. And the guys all get together and they're really good, and they come and they, talk to me and let me know they're going through there and keep the trails open, and almost everybody's really good. When I was a kid growing up, I rode my horse everywhere. And the police have oftentimes said, well, just post your land. But I don't want to post my land, because when I grew up, I used everybody's land. I just asked them and was courteous about it. It's very important for me that particularly young people have a place to play. When young people have things to do, like going fishing or going hiking or going canoeing, doing things with horses, doing things with livestock, they're busy and they're not in trouble. So the part of town where I live in is still pretty rural. And what is special about that is that when we moved there, my parents were not farmers. They came from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And Winterport, or Maine in general, is pretty territorial about people from outside. And so the farmers, first of all, they laughed because my mother would sweep the driveway, and it was a dirt driveway back then, but she grew up in a mill town where you had to sweep the driveway every day because there was mill dirt everywhere. The neighbors came and taught my parents things about where you can get chickens to raise meat birds, things you can do to make your land better. They did trades. You know, my father's first cow he got with a trade with a neighbor dairy farmer. I just recently had an issue with one of my cows having a calf, and I'm older and I'm not as flexible or strong as I once was. And I called the vet, but he was a long ways away. And so I called my neighbor. His grandfather was the one who made the swap with my father for the first cow. And that boy came over there and got that calf. He's not a boy, he's a man, but he's a boy to me. He came over and he helped me and he got that calf out. And those kind of swaps and trades in my neighborhood still happen. Yes, I think that the community here has a lot of connection. I think there's a lot of people here that work to keep that open, whether it's through the churches, the community centers, or the Winterport House of Pizza, which is always been a social connection since, geez, I don't know when they opened, in the 70s or 80s. And the school activities, they have community plays, and just in general, people inviting people over to play games. And during the day, which now that I'm older, when I was younger, I didn't have time to do that sort of stuff, but I do now. They also have a senior citizens group that is something that the town does for this community. And as people age, it keeps them getting together and not isolated. So those things are important. I feel pretty fortunate I grew up here and still have the opportunity to live on the farm I live on.